Okay, everyone, welcome to this live call. It's another synCREATE call. It's the second Saturday of the month, so it's synCREATE live, having our monthly discussion on our monthly topic. This month, we're talking about the source of our being. I'm James Prescott. I'm kind of hosting this call. I'm a writer and a podcaster. I blog at jamesprescott.co.uk, and my podcast is James Talks. Lisa Delay is with me. Just introduce yourself, Lisa, just quickly.
Yes, I'm Lisa Delay. I have a podcast called Spark My Muse at sparkmymuse.com that comes out twice weekly. And James and I meet every second Saturday for the synCREATE discussion, one time each month on the second Saturday.
Awesome. We have another guest too, Rhiannon, who I'm going to introduce properly in a minute, because this month is a bit special. Yes, Rhiannon has been kind of one of our big contributors to our discussions, and also in terms of creating stuff that's kind of around synCREATE themes. And Rhiannon is a songwriter, one of her many gifts, and she has written a song for one. I can't remember which month it was for, but she wrote a song and recorded it and put it on YouTube, and it's amazing. So we thought it might be a really cool thing to have her perform it live in one of our live calls. So that's what we're going to do. So just say hello, Rhiannon, before we kind of go over that. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon Hall, and I'm a writer, and I do a little bit of just whatever interests me at the time. So it was written for January for our vocation and calling topic.
Cool. Excellent. Right, that was a couple of months back, wasn't it? So, all right, let's do this. So Rhiannon is gonna perform live for us, and then we're gonna get into a little discussion on the topic of this month. So take it away, Rhiannon.
Thank you. This is called "Calm My Heart." I want to follow your lead, wherever you will take me. I want to see your footprints on the path where I am stepping. No matter how dark the road can get, Lord, call my heart where you can use it. I know there may be miles of unfamiliar ground. I know there will be trials, but as long as you're around, no matter how hard the road can get, Lord, call my heart where you can use it. You put this fire in my soul. You gave me dreams to call my own. You taught me all that I know. So until the day you call me home, I want to follow your lead, wherever you will take me. I want to see your footprints on the path where I am stepping. No matter how dark the road can get, Lord, call my heart where you can use it.
Oh, wow. Awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. I cannot believe how cool that is. That's just so good.
Like that, everybody.
Yeah, how was that?
That's
leave comments. That is so courageous. Rhiannon is so courageous. I don't care what she thinks. She is.
Yeah, it's gutsy because everybody's out there watching. It's live, chance to, but you did it.
Yeah.
You did it, girl.
Put it on YouTube. It might be the first take. It might be the 400th take.
Well, this first take is going to go. I must, this is being recorded, so it will go up on YouTube.
But and what you're saying about calling, I mean, you're writing the song about calling, and then you're kind of fulfilling a calling by doing it live and taking a risk and saying, yeah, people can criticize me, and like we live in an environment where people can just say the nastiest things when you're taking a risk and being vulnerable, and you're doing it anyway because it's part of your calling. You're like living out the song, It's brilliant.
It's so awesome, so awesome. Wow. It's so good to kind of see you.
What's that?
Sorry?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the challenge. I was like thinking, are you going to be like, no?
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought. Yeah, I was like, she's going to chicken out. It's like, no, well done. Yeah, well done.
Thank you so much.
So good. And if you do any more, we'll have you back and do them again, or anybody else does any more, we'll have them on.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to create a song, like this month is the source of our being. Who and what is the source of our being? If you are a songstress or songwriter or artist of any kind, and you want to promote something of yours on the next one, you can pop in and show us a video or a photo or do a song. I mean, we're here to encourage you to create things, and we're not tooting our own horn for this. This is actually for you. To encourage you. And so that's why we wanted to have Rhiannon on, because to encourage, I mean, this is like a springboard platform where we want to celebrate each other and encourage conversation, dialogue, and show each other's work. So it's really a blessing. Like that's a total, to hear that song and to see you have the guts to do it and just kill it, just totally nail it. It's like, I mean, oh my gosh, that feeds my soul. I just love it.
That makes it all worthwhile. That, it literally does. Absolutely makes it all worthwhile, because that's basically why we did this thing. Is to create a space for people to come and to share their work, and to also to kind of give some kind of direction and inspiration and focus to people's creativity. And that's what it's doing. And even if it's just impacting like one or two people, that makes it worthwhile. That's it. And it's so exciting. I'm really just totally blown away. Like really, this is so awesome to see. I love seeing people kind of walk into their calling and their, and their gifting and stuff like that. And that's a really, really good. And you're doing that, and the song's about calling as well, which is just unbelievable. So good.
And it wasn't like even like when you put stuff out there, when you say to people, "Go ahead and create and share it with us," you're thinking, "What if it's like?" You think in the back of your head, you want to be encouraging to everybody, but your song actually was really, really good, and your voice is really, really good. And so it was like, oh, and actually, it was good too, because when you say,
"Gone today,"
what's that?
My voice is almost gone today.
You couldn't tell.
I could not tell. No.
I woke up to allergies, and some neighbor is burning leaves, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I've been chugging coffee and popping candy the whole morning.
Well, you fooled me. It was great.
No, yeah, you fooled me too. Honestly, I wouldn't have known. That's fantastic. And you just stay there, stay involved, and we'll have a discussion and things.
I also have a question before you run off, and I don't want you to go too soon, but I was wondering, before you go, do you have anything that you're creating for this month's theme, or do you have any thoughts about who and what is the source of our being and how you might see that as an artist, Rhiannon?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
This morning, I was telling a friend of mine that it seems like an easy answer to say God is the source of my being. But I believe that, and it's true. Maybe that's why it's the easy answer. But also, I think some of our hopes, knowing that we have a purpose, knowing that if our creator made us, he must have made us for a purpose. So that is the source of our daily being, not just our origin. And I don't know. And then, of course, today I kind of think I've been praying a lot. It's like, let the coffee work, let the cough drops work, let the candy help. So, what is that? Now, the source of my being in any moment is whatever I'm using to exist. So, and to fulfill that purpose. I don't know. That's probably really corny and
no, it's
practical. It's practical side as well as the motivating side, for sure.
No, I was going to say, just stay. I'm not going to throw you out at all. I was going to keep you in for the call, unless somebody else comes in and wants to.
Unless you're ditching us, you can stay on the whole call.
Yeah, you can stay on the whole call. Yeah. Unless we get like 20 people coming in or wanting to join in, But yeah.
I'm good. I don't care.
No, don't care. And if people want to leave, again, if you want to leave feedback, encouragement for Rhiannon in the comments or whatever, just let us know, because and that would be good for Rhiannon as well, to be encouraged and stuff. I think, because been so good. So that's also our being.
That's kind of, I was thinking about this more, James, and like, how am I going to answer this? This might be of all of them so far. I was like, whoa, because I can talk about it and talk around it. And in terms of creating toward that, this might be the hardest, most challenging one yet, because it's really simple and really complicated at the same time. It's like, you could say, it's kind of like one of these everything and nothing, sort of things, kind of go in any direction with it, maybe. So I'm actually thinking if people, depending on how they're watching and listening, people can participate or not participate depending on their technology, like limitations, how they're watching this. And so it might not be easy for people to pop in, but it would be really interesting to hear other points of view. So if you're listening to this and you have like what that means for you now, or what that's meant, or what could mean in terms of art or in terms of your life, I would love to hear input, because I feel like I could say God too. And I did a podcast on it this week about stillness and centering and things like that, prayer and things, but it's really that's a big topic.
I've just been thinking about it and wrote down some thoughts about it. It's kind of like the source of our being is what connects us. It's what kind of binds us together. It's what directs us and leads us. And it's, to me, it was like, when I think of that phrase, it's like something beyond our conscious self. It's that thing beyond our consciousness that kind of we all share. It's that sense of when something's wrong. That's when we feel unsafe, like something that's we don't like. When you're around somebody, you don't quite feel comfortable. You don't know why, but there's something underneath the surface that just tells you that there's something not right. All perverse, or on the opposite side of that, when something's right, when something's you don't know why, but this is right, this is safe, this is good. And that might be a scientific thing, but I think it's a very spiritual thing. Because if we're created by God, then that's part of how He created us. And just on a scientific level, we're all made up of atoms, and the atoms that we're made of used to make other people, or other planets, or other parts of other animal, or whatever. So we're all connected, and so there was this kind of deep connection. And obviously you can talk about God and the Holy Spirit and all this kind of thing. And I think all of this stuff is what connects us. And obviously, ultimately, it's all about God. And He's like the ultimate source of everything. And He created everything. If you're a Christian, anyway, that's what you believe. And so I was like thinking, I got to thinking crazy questions about the supernatural, and that maybe what we think is supernatural might actually be just another level of reality, but just one we don't understand.
Right.
But it would still, but even if it was, it would still be something divine, something from God, because God made the universe.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But then again, of course, God is outside of time and outside of creation, and exists outside and inside everything that He made at the same time. You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got some other thoughts as well, but I'll talk about that later, because there's something about the source of our being, creativity, which I'll go on to later. Like when other people have kind of, I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about how we tend to think of God so much smaller. When we think of the source of our being, it starts to sound really large, which is good. You know, just like not thinking of God as, I think most of the time, especially in Christian circles, God is sort of essentially Superman. It's like we're personifying God as a person, just much bigger, much stronger, can go into our problems and fix them, kind of like a person, but just more strong. And we're not really thinking of God in a really broad sense, outside of time, inside of time, and nothing like us, actually, you know, nothing really like us, but also able to enter history or incarnating us at the same time. So really what we're talking about is kind of impossible to, or we can't, I mean, please, you know, come on. We're not,
Absolutely,
we're really trying to figure this out. I mean, we're just getting the tiniest little thing, and it falls apart very quickly as soon as we try a container for that. And so I always find it really, as soon as somebody tells you, well, that's not the right way to think about God, I think it's kind of arrogant, right? I feel like, really, you've got to figure it out? That's incredible. But when you think about the source of our being, we have no idea. Like, everybody's kind of wandering around going, I don't really know what's going on. And then the people who do, you know, they're just full of crap. You know, because if you give it any real thought, most of the stuff that we're really digging into in science starts to get really absurd. Like, even I was thinking about quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is completely absurd. It's two particles separated by, you know, millions of light years doing exactly the same thing as each other. What? Okay. I mean, it's just, there's some weird stuff going on, and that's just the stuff we know about. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff we don't understand in the world and how existence works. And so when I think about the source of our being, that's when I do a deep dive into mystery. And I think, I'm pretty sure I don't know what's going on, but that's the walk of faith, in fact. And so to me, I grew up in fundamentalism. So I had doctrine shoved down my throat forever. And then it didn't work anymore.
Yep.
And then I thought, well, it's too late now. I'm already a spiritually sensitive person. I can't give it up. I'm already formed. But that doesn't work anymore. So there's got to be more, and the more just keeps going, you know. So I can't throw it out, but at the same time, what I was taught doesn't work. So I have mystery. So I'm okay with mystery, you know, and I am okay with love. So I think of love is how to be in the world, and that in as woo woo and hippie as that sounds, I suppose, love is the source of our being. And if you abide in love, then, you know, I'm kind of a big Gospel of John fan. So
that's interesting, because there's an atheist scientist in the UK who's quite big and does a lot of TV work and things. And he's got qualifications coming out of his ears, and but he's an atheist. But he said that the meaning of the universe is love. And this is a guy he's an atheist, you know. It's just really thought provoking, that.
Yeah,
I think
he got to it a different way, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same outcome.
He got to the conclusion a different way, and some atheists are full of wonder, the same wonder as me, and they come to a different conclusion, but they have the same wonder as me that Christians don't have. and in a way come to the same conclusion. It's really weird. I actually will connect more with atheist guests I have on my podcast than I do with a lot of Christians. And I find it really perplexing, but sometimes they'll end up at meaninglessness and I won't, but yet the wonder and keeps them going in a really similar way. And it's really fascinating. So I wonder if they're actually on the opposite side of the same coin that I'm on. And at one point they'll kind of give into it. They've been holding something back that they'll wind up giving into because they've been thinking of God too small too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to believe in your God. And I'm like, and neither am I, because
exactly. Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
That's interesting.
I think in a lot of relationships, what you will see happen is people think they know somebody and they stop trying. And then all of a sudden someone comes up with something and you're like, but you're not the person I thought you were. So I don't know how to take you. And I think that is what how we should approach, not how we should approach, but I think that's what happens with God. We realize God's so much bigger than us and we have to let go of our preconceived ideas. And whether it's God, science, whatever the mystery is that you're pursuing, there's got to be mystery there or it just gets stale and boring. And then you get shocked and then all of a sudden you have to reformat everything you've ever thought. And so that mystery, that investigation, there's got to be something there to keep life from being stale. And I also grew up okay, here's the definition of God. Here are the laws of God. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute, all this stuff doesn't quite fit in this little box. You know what? God doesn't fit the box. That's a man-made idea. God's way beyond that.
Yeah. And who God actually is and our perceptions of who he is or who we want him to be is very, very different. You know, everyone has this idea. Everyone has an idea of who they want God to be, or who they think God is, or who they want God to be. And actually, none of them are probably adequate, because if God is God, then surely he is more mysterious than we can comprehend or understand, or know, or perceive as human beings. Because we're not God; we're just human beings. You know, and we will never, till whenever Jesus comes back or whatever, you know, the end of time, we will never ever fully understand who God is. Then in a few hundred years' time, the most progressive theology today will seem really archaic and old-fashioned and out of date. You know, that's because that's what happens, because you know, human beings evolve, and our understanding of consciousness this is kind of linked with spiral dynamics as well. Human consciousness. I should have brought some stuff on that today, but the idea that our perception and understanding of the world and how we interact with the world develops through history and develops through our lives, and there's like first tier consciousness and second tier consciousness, and within those two tiers there's different levels of consciousness, and like it's just been shown through history how humans as a species have gone through those different stages, and that the individuals are at different stages as well. And so we have to have that mystery. We have to have that unknowing. And
I think about just knowing ourselves. I'm in my 40s and I feel like I'm barely getting to know just myself, right? And you know, I'm just a finite human being, or getting to know people in my life who I feel like I'm just at the tip of getting to know people. My children, even though they're young, I think I know them, and then they surprise me. And there's a whole depth to them, that the seen and the unseen in their personalities, and as they develop, I barely really know them, and I pay really close attention, but I still barely know them. And then when we think we could possibly know about this really infinite creator God and this redeeming force and this loving being and the complexity of that, I mean, it is really, we're talking about something when we can barely get to know ourselves, and like the part of ourselves that we don't know, that we don't know. You know, the darker parts, like, I don't know if you've seen those. There's like, you know, 4 quadrants. It's the stuff we know. There's the stuff that we don't know that we don't know. There's the stuff, you know, that we'll probably find out. And then there's the stuff other people know about us that we've told them, or that they found out about us, you know, that they've through knowing us, they know about us. And that's just this one little section of us. But then there's stuff that people really can't ever know about us in this other section. And then there's the stuff that we can ever really know even about ourselves, that we can't even sort of find about ourselves. It's hidden, it's underneath things. Occasionally it'll come to the surface and we'll be like, oh, that's something I knew I can understand about myself. But really, even our own interior lives, there's a lot of obscurity there. And sometimes we'll figure out something, and sometimes it'll lie under there for a long time. And we're just on this process of development to kind of uncover all that's there. And we're just people, you know. So I think I'm a lot less complicated than God is. So I think it's going to be.
We're constantly changing and evolving. Everything that happens to me today will make me a new person tomorrow. The person I was 3 or 4 years ago would not know this person I am today at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this whole thing about the source of our being, I was thinking about how it impacts our creativity as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, like how, and again, I actually started thinking about grace as well. And if we make the source of our being, we can make our actions or our relationships or our status or our money, or we can make all these things the source of our being, like where we're grounded. What we need to do actually is make the source of our being mystery and unknowing and God, basically. Put our security in that, you know, this kind of idea that we are loved and accepted as we are, and that we matter as we are, not as, and that what we do and that our relationships or our status or anything like that isn't what our security comes from, and it isn't the source of our being. But even then, our circumstances and our personality and you know, just who we are can be a filter for how the source of our being actually works through in our creativity. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, so we're all kind of connected to this one source, but we all have this filter which kind of makes it unique which makes our interpretation of that different for every single one of us.
Right. So how do we express the concept of source of our being in art, would you say? Like, I can talk around it, but I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I don't know the picture I could draw, or the photograph I could take, or the song. I guess you could sing, you know, poetry could be maybe the closest you could get to something. I mean, that's why I love poetry. I was just listening to, I highly recommend that you listen to, I'm going to do a little plug for Krista Tippett, who really needs no plug at all, but her latest On Being episode is with, his name is David White. He was a friend of John O'Donoghue from Ireland, and he's also a poet. And it's just a brilliant episode this week, David White on Being. And he reads some poetry, and it's really profound stuff, and it's just beautiful. But poetry has this way of kind of not going directly at something like prose and trying to describe everything, but it kind of like hints at it, and then you kind of get there. You can kind of get there. Just, I don't know, I'm not describing it very well myself, but you feel it out or something. And his poetry that was being read on the episode is just, it's so powerful. And that's why I'm thinking poetry could maybe get us towards something that can kind of flesh that out.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, I was thinking, I mean, there's two things for me. When you do what I call free creating, which is creating something without thinking, so drawing something with closing your eyes while you're drawing, or writing without thinking about what's coming out, or something like, or just jamming and waiting for some kind of song to come out. That's what, to me, that's where you get in touch with what's really going on inside of you. That's where you get in touch with the source of your being. And it may not be about the source of, well, it may not be about the topic, the source of our being, but it will show a glimpse of who you are and what's really going on inside of you. I think that's certainly true. And when you're thinking about creativity, about the topic, I was thinking of some kind of visual thing about the universe, or some graphics and stuff that's kind of that could kind of just I can't really describe it, but there's actually this great scene. I don't know if you've seen the film The Tree of Life. If you haven't, please watch it. It's just unbelievable. There's this 20-minute scene, or I'd call it a segment, which is literally the creation of the universe.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
And with orchestral music, and that's all it is. And you just watch it, and it's unbelievable, and it's just I can't describe it because it's just so amazing, and it's worth watching the film just for that segment. And there's no dialogue, no people actually at all. It's just the creation of the universe from the beginning to, I think, just about when to the early cavemen. It's just so beautifully done. It looks real. It looks real, and it doesn't look like CGI at all. I don't even know how he did it, but I would definitely watch that. And for me, that kind of captured the essence of the source of our being, like where it all began. That's a really, really good example of that. So, Rhiannon, have you got anything you want to say? Yeah.
No, just the conversation and describing poetry, describing the source of our being. Those are all just journeys down the rabbit hole kind of conversations. You can go anywhere with them and never find an answer. Just more mystery.
That's why I love discussing stuff like this, because you can probably end up talking about it for hours if you actually get going, if you really kind of start to go down that rabbit hole. And
speaking of that, okay, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it relates. Did you happen to see Rob Bell at his last live stream thing he did? He was actually at a Facebook event.
I saw a bit of that. Yeah, I saw a bit of that.
So for people who haven't seen that, what he was invited as a special guest, along with loads of other people who do live streaming from Facebook, to a Facebook event in Hollywood, I think. And so when he did it, he actually really fooled me, because he had in the back like palm trees, just like in his backyard. And he happened to pick a backdrop that looked like his backyard. And I was like, oh, there he is in his backyard again. And then he was like, here's where I am. And he goes and shows, and there's like someone with snakes, and there's someone baking something. Then there's two people from Funny or Die are there. What?
Wasn't there
hula hoop, like with like a glow in the dark hula hoop girl or guy, and then he starts interacting. This is where I'm getting to the source of our being. I'm actually getting somewhere, sort of. So then he starts interacting. The Funny or Die people come over, and they're like, "What do you do?" And we're with Funny or Die. How many people do you have watching your live stream? And he goes, oh, about 934. And they're like, well, that's really good. And he goes, yeah, well, what do you guys do? Oh, we write jokes. Oh, okay. And they go, what do you do? He goes, well, I'm a former pastor, but I talk to people about not skimming the surface of life and what meaning is and how to really be here. And he doesn't even talk about his book, but he's talking around the edges of, why are we here and the meaningful things of life and just kind of what he's really about. But he's kind of talking about it in an accessible way. And he says that I want to talk to people in an accessible way. And so why do you think you're here? He says to the girl, she goes, well, I think I'm here to eat more Chick-fil-A. Then he turns the thing to himself and he goes, I think it might be more than that. And he turns it back to her and she goes, I don't know. And she's doing different things. And then they dig just a little deeper. He goes, I think we might need to go deeper. And the other guy goes, yeah, I think we might need to. And then they got into a conversation. This was like so brilliant because he did it. He said, she goes, well, sometimes, there's a lot of traffic and someone will cut you off and it'll be really bad. And we'll just go in and make a joke about it. And that'll be the source of our material. And he goes, so redemption, right? He's like, you know, you take something bad and turn it into something good, and it's not so bad anymore. And you use that for your job and making jokes. And they're like, yeah. And he goes, I think we did it. You finding meaning in what's bad, and then and it was like, it was like, he did it. He did it. Like, he was showing what he does for a living, but he was also pointing to the source of our being, and he was showing how to find meaning in the world and also find meaning in the crap in life, and just to find something richer. And I was like, I mean, he's like a pastor for just people on the street. You know what I mean? It was like, it worked, and it was just totally spontaneous. And I was like, oh wow, he's doing his thing. Like, he's doing what he was here to do. And it was really inspiring. And that taps into that source of our being stuff. If you're really connected like that, it's just seamless. And it was really neat to see him just be with people, you know, just really just talk to them. And no agenda, just like, do you think there's more? Do you think there's more? Well, of course there's more. And they found it, you know. It's just really cool to see him really connect.
Yeah, he's awesome. He really is awesome. Yeah, I love seeing that sort of thing happen. It's just, yeah.
So just you can still see it if you go to his Facebook page, and it would be like one of the recorded things that you could click. And I think there's actually at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Monday, he's going to be answering a whole bunch of questions about his new book live too. So
yeah, wow, and
he's coming to London in August. Did you hear that,
James? No. Oh, right. Oh, well, I've got to get on that then.
Pay attention. He'll come. You can see him.
Good stuff. I can't wait to see that. I haven't caught up with much of his stuff like in the last week or so, because I've just been like so busy. But I will definitely be going to see him in London. Yeah, if he's here, because it's got to be done. You know, and I said also when I interviewed him, I said I would see him. It's true as well. So when he came to London, so. It's not on his site yet, but
yeah, well, he just mentioned it, so it's just going through now, I think.
Yeah.
And anybody who's interested, this is a side shameless plug. I'm going to go live tomorrow on Blab at 8 p.m. Eastern time Sunday. So it's talking about something different. It's sorry for this side commercial. It's going to be about connecting with nature for rebirth. And now that it's springtime, although it is actually snowing here. Is it snowing where you are, Rhiannon?
No, it's
so hideous.
It's cool this morning, but not snowing.
Ugh, snowing here. I'm like, give me a break.
Yeah, I spent like yesterday in an open garage. The door was open. I was barefoot because we were tie-dyeing t-shirts, and I didn't want to get my shoes all dyed. So I was barefoot on a concrete floor for 3 hours, and I wasn't even that cold.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not snowing here. It's not hot. It's cool, but it's survivable without snow.
Oh, it's sunny here. It's sunny here. So not to make you feel guilty or anything, you know, but yeah, it's really nice here, I'm afraid. So
rub it in, James, if you can.
Yeah, I will. I'll keep talking about it if you like. You know, I could go out without a coat on. You know, it's so nice. Yeah.
Stressed out.
Yeah. Well, actually, the thing is,
I'm going to be the weirdo running around in tank top and shorts, and it's like everyone else is going to be in coats. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of refused to wear a coat. I don't care what the weather's like. I'm done until next like November. That's it. I don't care what the weather's like. We're done with coats. That's it.
Same.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
yeah, on the subject of the source of our being, I think.
Are you going to do any podcasts about it? James? Are you going to
I don't know if I'm going to have time. I'm going away on Monday, so I don't know if I'm going to have time to do something. But I will try and do something this month about it, because I would like to do something about it. I would like to create something, especially after the thoughts I've gone through today. I think I could do a couple of podcasts on this probably.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the source of our being, it's a complex subject. It can mean a lot of things.
Yeah,
it can mean who created us, where do we come from. It can mean what grounds us, where's our security. It can mean what's really going on deep in our subconscious. You know, it can mean what ideas are going on in there. What's going on inside of us.
Right.
And I think they're all connected. And it can mean also that thing, like I talked about at the beginning, the scientific thing, that sense that we're all connected, that sense of I don't feel safe or I do feel safe. That connection that, like twins, identical twins have this kind of like psychological or subconscious kind of bond. Like I know a story about a pair of twins, and one of them started to feel pains in her stomach for no reason. And it turned out that her twin sister was giving birth at that exact moment. And so there's that kind of thing going on. I don't think, obviously, that's twins, but I think there's something like that going on with all of us. So the source of our being can mean all of those different things. And I think they're all connected with God in some way as well. But yeah, sorry, Lisa, you were going to say something.
Well, yeah, similar to what you're saying is that there is a social component. We're so wired socially, well, all mammals are really, that there's a social component to how we exist in the world. And that, I work with an incarcerated population once a week, and it's because of being antisocial and making bad decisions socially that people are in jail. It's for those poor decisions and relationships gone wrong that they're in jail at all. But when we have good social connections, we feel well, there's shalom, right? There's health and well-being for us. And there's a social component, and Trinity is referred to in a social context, and God is referred to as community, and people are social creatures. And then there's this interconnectedness as a source of our being, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that we're better together than we are as loners, as off on our own. People can really sink into despondency, and things go bad, when you feel alone in the world. And so the source of our being is also connected to God, but to interconnectedness with each other. And I think, in a sense, seeing God in each other, that's how God appears as well. I know people will be like, what are you saying, we're gods, but I'm saying that's part of what incarnation and Emmanuel is, God with us, and that we can identify God in each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're all beings that are based on energy. And have you ever met someone and you just sense their energy? You sense some kind of harmony with them before you ever even speak to them. You just feel connected to them. And then you can meet someone else and you just don't feel connected to them. There's maybe not repulsive, but there's something that just makes you feel odd. And you can kind of navigate where you're supposed to be and who you're supposed to be with, based on who you connect with. And sometimes once you start connecting, then that energy can feed and grow into more and more connections. Just last 6 to 9 months, I've had this whole chain reaction of people come into my life that have completely transformed it in so many ways. And, that started with just a couple of interesting connections. And, it perpetuates the cycle. And so there is definitely a sense of society and a sense of connection among people.
Yeah. And I think that's why tribe is so important. The more we think it isn't, people have said, oh, the internet is just broken down into a bunch of niches and groups and people, and that's so bad. And I guess people thought the internet would be one giant tribe, but people are still people no matter what. And you do go, like goes with like, and tribes form because people are just wired like that. They've first in families and clans and stuff. And that's how people have always been. And you treat your in tribe well, and you treat your out tribe, you feel justified in treating them poorly. You know, they don't agree with us, they're evil or they're bad, or we feel justified to treat them poorly. And that's how people are. And you can overcome it, but it's only with like really conscientious thought to think. That's why treating your enemies with love is this radical and kind of insane concept that we're challenged to do, right? Nobody wants to do that because your enemies are not in your tribe. And so I think it's only natural that we cluster into like-minded tribes, and there's nothing wrong with, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. But that's normal, and it helps buoy us up, and it's part of how we're wired, and it's good. It's just that we have to be careful to not treat people on the outs with hostility. You know,
that's absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. And
what's that?
To find community and encourage community without encouraging division.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I think the thing is as well, there's that thing about loving our enemies. I think we make light of that sometimes because we think our enemies are just the people we disagree with or people we just don't like, you know, but we can still get on with them. But our enemy to people that we would say, like you would say, I can forgive them, but I would never forgive them. You know, so let's say say you have a child and that gets abused. So he or she gets abused, and they find the person who did it. Like loving your enemy and forgiveness is forgiving that person and loving them. It's like even them, the people that actually abused and hurt your child, you know, and that's like scandalous. It's like, oh no, could never do that. No, you should hate those people. And it's like, well, actually, Jesus says no. You know, you don't have to like them. You don't have to be friends with them. You don't have to hang out with them. But you have to love. But God loves them, and you know, Jesus died for them, and you know, and that's how radical loving your enemy is, and forgiveness is, and that's challenging for everyone, including me and I think everyone. You know, could we forgive the person that abused our child? You know, could we love the person that abused our child? You know, that's like the most like wicked crime at the moment culturally. It's like, I mean, it is one of the worst crimes you can commit, or one of the worst things that can happen. Right. And so when you talk about forgiveness and love and loving your enemies, that's the sort of thing you need to kind of use as an example. Could you do that? And you know what? If you can't, it's probably quite understandable. There's, you know, pretty good reasons for not wanting to do that. But ultimately that's the challenge of that Jesus puts in front of us. You know.
And this is the challenge of embracing the incredibly weird concept that the source of our being is the source of their being too. And
yeah.
You know, if you want to think of it in religious terms, we're all the body of Christ. You know, to some degree, we all have the ability to be in the body of Christ. As far, I don't know, we won't get into the salvation part of that, but or just fellow man concept. But
yeah.
Okay, so if there's creation, if there's creator, then that person was created too. So we're all on equal ground. We all screwed up that way where someone else screws up another way and we screw up another way.
Yeah.
And it makes forgiveness harder and easier at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Forgiveness is a process, you know. It's not just a one-off thing. It's a thing we do daily, you know. Right. That's a whole subject that's a whole monthly theme in itself.
We have a forgiveness theme coming.
Yeah, we do.
I can't remember which month it is, but it'll be.
Soon.
Yeah, don't say a word of that. Save it all.
Yeah, that discussion is going to be interesting for sure. yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion. But yeah, so I think, but this sense that that everything's connected and everything is spiritual, and I think that's what the source of our being is kind of all about. And there's mystery and unknowing and like unseen and you know.
Still,
all of that. Just I've been good talking to you about this. I just want to say, actually, the forgiveness is the theme for September. So, just for everyone who's watching, that's the theme for September, forgiveness. So, and next month is identity, which should be very interesting. And Lisa will be hosting that call on the second Saturday of May.
Time.
So that's going to be great.
It'll be the
same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and to get the specific link, if you don't just find it on Blab at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. UK time, is to just follow us on synCREATE-01 on Twitter. It'll always be there. And if you have things, if you want to share something from the theme, just use the tag synCREATE and we'll find it and we'll retweet it and we'll share it. And it's always really interesting to me to see what other people's thoughts and other people's creations around the theme. So if you feel like you have an opinion or want to share something, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to see what everyone's thoughts are on this, because I think there's so many. It's such a big subject that there's so many dimensions to it, and there's so much you could talk about in relation to it. And we've only scratched the surface today, and there's so much more that we could talk about, and it's really exciting. I love talking about this kind of stuff. Yeah. So
and if you have, I put my website with I'm sure James will too, with my podcast. And if you're listening and you want to put up your website or where we can read your things, and if you have a blog or you have music or anything, you can just put those in the comments section and we can look at your stuff and maybe pass it around if it fits with the theme. Because I'm just going to... Go ahead, James.
No, go ahead.
So one of the things we wanted to do with synCREATE is to just make sure that artists and creators of all kinds, whether you do video or whether you do photography or poetry or writing or anything, the creators get a chance to have more of an audience and more support and encouragement. So this isn't something we're doing for any kind of profit. It's just something we thought is important to do in the world. And that's all we tried to kind of collaborate together to try to give more of a platform for any kind of creation at all about our themes, but hopefully to just give people more space to risk creatively. And so if you feel like you wanted to join in with us in any way like that, just start using the hashtag synCREATE and we will try to spread around what you're up to and see what you're up to. So we have writers who write blog posts and people who we're on Instagram too, so you can look for the tag. You see, we have some political news, and so I think
how
that all works out. So this is going to be fun. We'll probably be winding it down, and make sure to join us. I hope you all can join us on second Saturday in May. I'll be hosting it, so keep a lookout. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @LisaDelay, LisaDelay, and I release twice a week, so you can hear my podcasts.
Yeah, my podcast is about once a week, but this week it's going to be there's going to be 2 episodes this week. One on Monday and one on Wednesday or Thursday. A couple of interviews, a couple of returning people. So check that out. I've also got some great interviews up there with people like Rob Bell, and who we talked about, who's awesome to interview. I've got to say, and other people as well. So and Lisa's got
coming.
My book. Oh yes, I have a book. Yes, I do. Well, we're just we're doing all the kind of last little bits. The the legal stuff and the design and all that kind of thing, the internal design. I have a bit called Mosaic of Grace, which is coming out in the next few months. As soon as I know when it's coming out, I can let you know. I'm not sure yet. We haven't got a date yet, but yes, it's about grace, and I'm really looking forward to publishing it. And it's not going to be self-published; it's published by a publisher, which is quite scary. But yes, I will let you know about that. I think June. We're talking about grace on here, so hopefully by then I'll have some more information about the book as well, so I can let you know about that. But and check out Rhiannon's stuff as well. Rhiannon is
Come on, girl, get with it. It's right there.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Type away.
I can't.
Yeah, you got YouTube, you got a blog.
I do, and I have a keyboard that isn't cooperating today. So
we could just mention it. You can mention where to find you.
Okay, I'm on Twitter at Rhiannon Hall 47, which you should be able to see up under my name. You can look me up on YouTube under Rhiannon Hall, and then today's song was Call My Heart. I've got a few cover songs, and then another song called Awkward Love Song that is an original. And then I have a blog that I inconsistently post to at the moment, and I'll get the link for that in just a second.
And I really encourage you to check that out. Check out Rhiannon's music because it's great, and Rhiannon, it's just fantastic. And Lisa's podcast, this week's one, my goodness me, the one I think it was this week or last week.
Which one?
Talking to a psychologist.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, that blew my mind. I was so upset when it got to the end. It's like, oh, you've got to pay for this last bit. It's like, I just heard this question. I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear the answer. And it's like, oh, sorry, you got to. I was like, no.
Yeah, it's reserved for the real, true fans. On the lie detection, you're talking about lie detection.
Yeah. I'm talking about the things at the end, the answer that surprised you.
Oh yeah. You're talking about. I had a world expert in memories and false memories, and he's in Canada. But what he does is he trains policemen so they don't break people's brains and make them remember things that never happened, which apparently happens all the time. People will confess to things they've never done, and when and they will remember doing things that they haven't done. And it apparently is really easy in their study. Just real quick, this was so weird to me that I was like, so in their study, they convinced these adults, normal brains, no mental illness, intelligent people, in just 3 interviews that they had committed a serious crime while they were teenagers. They convinced 70% of them in just 3 interviews. And he said if they had done 5 of them, they think they could have convinced 100% of them that they had done serious crimes. So they killed the study. It was too easy to implant the memories. And they were like, holy crap, we have to kill the study. And it's so easy to implant memories that you have to question if your memories, especially the most negative ones, are actually all that accurate. It's pretty.
Yeah, and I've had neurologists on my podcast too. It's so fascinating talking about how the brain works, and it's quite scary as well how the brain works. Actually, one of the 2 of the guests that are on this week, one of the guests that's on this week, one of my podcasts is a neurologist, and we've talked about these. She's actually done research which actually says that there's a part of the brain which lights up only when you pray. Literally, not when you meditate, not when you listen to God, when you pray. And also, apparently the research actually shows that people who get prayed for are more likely to be hit to recover from illness than people who aren't. And that's just like the statistics. It's crazy. So yeah, she's on this week, so come and have a listen to that. That'll be up on Thursday. So Lisa's podcast is great.
And your
I think my
podcast is
podcast
great.
is great, but Who am I to say? No, I don't know.
Yeah, but it looks like we've got more people. Like it
so
always happens towards the end of the hour
James,
that we always get more people.
it's
But
always the same.
so if for all of you,
Oh,
James
yes,
Watson, oh,
James is calling in. James is calling in, so I'm going to bring him in to just talk about the subject. Is that okay, everyone? So I'm going to bring him in. James, welcome, James. When he finally gets
Hi.
on. It's going to be fun. Hey,
how are
James.
you guys? Is this the end of the podcast? Did I miss it?
yes.
Oh,
No.
A little bit. But
Yeah, we're kind of at the end, but if you've got anything to say, that'd be really great. I'd love you to.
no, it's just that interesting. You were saying
the
about that a certain part of the brain lights up when you're praying. Well, I mean, every time there's a thought, there's a corresponding physical thing that's happening in the brain that gives rise to that thought. So, yeah, that would be a true statement that something happens when you're praying in your brain.
Yeah, I just found it when I heard that, I just found it so fascinating because it's almost like we were created to pray. You know what I mean. Like we were designed that way.
Well, I think we all. I mean, I'm an atheist, but I think we all pray at certain times. Like when I leave my cell phone somewhere, I'll pray like it's still there when I come back. It's kind of a natural thing, but I equate that to like praying. It's the same kind of "oh, please, please," which I think is healthy, I guess, whenever you do that.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts about like the source of our being? What do you like from an atheist perspective? What would you say is the source of our being?
I'm kind of a bit Buddhist too. Like I don't think there's a separate you, apart from your body. You're just a process. I didn't decide to be born as a man or a white man with blue-green eyes. It just happened as a process. And me thinking James Watson, that identity, that's just my brain telling me that over and over again. So I believe it because I think like every single cell in your body is replaced every 7 years. You're always changing, but you think you're not. Yeah, that's just a story your brain's creating for survival. That's what I see. So it's just a process, and I don't think there's a creator. It seems like a natural process being alive. Yeah. I don't know.
No. It's good to get. I think it's good to get different perspectives. Like we were, especially from somebody who doesn't really believe like in God at all.
Well,
it's good. It's healthy to get good different perspectives.
You guys believe in God? Like I don't have any evidence either way. I can't really say.
Yeah, I don't have any evidence either.
No, I don't have any.
It's not.
Solid.
It's not really measurable.
I can't get a box and say here's evidence what exists. And
I think it's really hard with certain things that are like interior things. Like, there's a lot of things that are sort of interior things that you can't measure, but they seem real. And I don't know if that's how you feel about like how much credence you put James Watson. I have to say James 1 and James 2. Like, do you sense that justice is a real thing or a fictitious thing?
That justice, you say?
Yeah. Like, how do you see that? Is that just something we make up, or do you think that's a real thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to right and wrong. Like and what right and wrong just changes from one year to the next, right? Like. Yeah. And from one culture to the other, like in some cultures, a woman has to be, covered up. Like I see him at the grocery store sometimes. That's what's right in their culture. And you two women are clearly, are unveiled. So, right. It all changes. There's no absolute right and wrong. Like it's wrong for, a human to kill another human in our culture right now. But, if you send them to war, it's okay. It's it's a very changeable. I don't think there's any fixed right and wrong, and so yeah, justice is just a figment or a creation, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. And I guess any you can't really appeal to it. So if somebody comes up and kills someone you love, so what, right? I mean, it's like, it's tricky because you want to appeal to justice, but you can't, because like if someone, so your feelings about being violated are completely not okay. Like that's what's so troubling, I guess, because I don't know. Do you have anybody you love? Do you have children or family or anything?
No, I'm single. I have a mother and a father and a sister peppered throughout the world, but yeah.
And I guess that's what's so frustrating sometimes, is that we want to appeal to something higher than ourselves. Like if someone were to like rape and murder your sister, you would want to feel that was unfair. But you can't. Because it's totally fair according to that other person's perspective.
Well, so, I mean, I would feel angry, of course, and upset, but I understand that that same person who murdered my sister, if that person, I'll say it's a guy because it generally would be, if that guy was, born, in a family that had a higher socioeconomic status and had access to education, and his environment was totally different, he probably wouldn't have done what he did. So yeah, I'd feel hurt and angry, but I'd understand why he did it. And it's not because he's some evil guy from an evil spirit land. It's because he's the sum total of all the inputs in his environment, which he has no control over, and his biology, which he has no control over. So
yeah, there's definitely truth in that. We're all there's all this kind of nature versus nurture, but I think it's a combination of both. And we're all a product of obviously on the genetic level, our DNA, but also we're a product of our unique. We've all got unique circumstances, unique things that have happened to us, which a unique combination which hasn't happened to anybody else, which doesn't. And so we're all a sum of that. We're all a sum of that. That mix, I don't know what you call it. It's not a milkshake, but
milkshake. You must be hungry.
But we're all kind of a cocktail of different experiences and knowledge and backgrounds and cultural contexts, and they all shape who we are. I personally, in terms of the source of our being, I would say that the source of our being would be something deeper than that. But obviously, from someone who doesn't believe in any kind of God at all, that's a completely different concept, because I think that's really, really admirable, actually, to say that if someone raped and abused your sister, that you wouldn't, the response that you mentioned. I know that if someone did that to my sister, I probably wouldn't be so. I probably wouldn't have such.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really gracious and loving. Actually, that's what loving your neighbor is kind of all about, in a sense, which is weird because not being being an atheist and not actually believing in all of that stuff. But that's what we talked about. We were talking about this before you came on. Actually, loving your neighbor and loving your enemies, and that's a great example of that, in a sense. Showing grace towards the people that have hurt the people that you love the most, because you understand that where they come from and what their background is and who they are, and that it's not just about them being a bad person, that it's about how life is shaped
than just. I mean, the typical thing people do is just seek revenge. I think that's kind of the normal, oh, you did that, well, now I'm going to get you back. But to think of, well, they have other things going on is kind of much more rational way of looking at it. I don't know. It's easy to say. It's easy to armchair quarterback and say that now. In the moment, I don't know if that would be true, because you'd be so heightened emotionally if you actually have a close relationship with someone and that does happen. Because that's, I don't know. I wonder if you're that calm emotionally in the heat of the moment. I know I couldn't be. I couldn't
I'm not sure I
be
could.
in the heat of a murder, a rape and murder. I probably would be pretty upset. So if that's true, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd really
You got any?
react or behave. I mean, I might be pushed to do a horrible thing, just like that person was somehow pushed to do the horrible thing they did, because we're both people are humans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got any?
Where does accountability and personal responsibility to make better choices come from? Like, we should each choose to, abide by the greater societal standard of right and wrong of wherever we are. Now, if we are raised in a situation where it's more, hedonistic or primitive, and we can attack somebody, but we're now in a society, an environment where that's not okay, shouldn't we adapt to that? Isn't that our responsibility? So shouldn't that person be held to that responsibility?
Well, I mean, when I look at a murderer, for example, I understand. I don't consider them an evil person. I consider them the sum of all their life experience and their biology, which they have no control over. But we still can't have that person, even though I don't think they're evil, walking around killing again. So we do need to separate them from society. Do we need to put them in a cage like an animal? Yeah. I don't know. I think we're past that. But let's deal with people as being more complex than just good and bad. And if we do think they're going to hurt people, then we got to separate them from society. That's where I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I really agree with you on that. It's like, there is a sense of like, okay, this person is a sum of the circumstances that's made them do this. But at the same time, there is a sense of like, there's a human desire for justice, and also if someone is mentally ill and liable to go around killing people, then they need firstly they need to be protected from themselves, in a sense, in case they hurt themselves, and in case but they also need to protect the rest of us need protecting from that. So there is a sense of like something has to be done. And it's not about like, oh, let's just send them off and lock them up in prison because they're evil and wicked. Let's just say, okay, there's something wrong here and we can do something about it. People have to take responsibility for their actions, to a certain extent, unless they're really, really ill, and they're not really aware of what they're doing.
It's also not that deterministic. And I don't think it's that deterministic. I think people do have choices and they know what they're doing. It's not like people are robots. So in the sense of, yes, people are the product of their environments. But if you look at families, there are often families where things are going really well. One brother goes out and kills someone. The other brother is perfectly normal in society. Or it's a horrible family situation and the same thing happens. One ends up, in a bad situation in a gang, kills people. The other person goes to college and has there are choices, and people often will pick, even though their surroundings and upbringing is very similar, they'll choose different paths. So it's not so much that, because I've seen it. I work with the incarcerated population on a regular basis, and I've seen, oh, my brother does fine. I picked drugs. I picked a gang. And so, it's not, yes, people are products of their environment and their biology to a degree, but they also do have some responsibility for their choices.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think it's a really, you've got to judge each case on its own merits. I think, because some people get driven to doing certain things, to making certain choices because of things that have happened to them, or because of a condition that they have, and that's, although they have to take responsibility for that, we have to also recognise that actually some of the things that have happened to them have gotten to this place where they've made that decision. But at the same time, there are some people who are just like nasty people and just want to hurt people and just don't care. And it's not. There's no one size fits all. I think, and I think. But I do think that the source of our being, which is what this discussion is about, I think the source of our being is something deeper than that. And we can close ourselves off from it we can literally block ourselves off from it. Like, I mean, I'm talking from my personal belief about God being the source of our being and everything coming back to this kind of, that sense that something is right and something is wrong, that we all kind of instinctively have. I think it goes beyond cultural boundaries. I think there's some things where everybody would say that's right, that's wrong, like just instinctively without even thinking about it, without regard for cultural background. And that's kind of where that, I think, in terms of God, that's where that comes in, the source of our being. That, and that desire for justice, that desire for, people to take responsibility for their actions, for people to, for something to be done about a big problem, like for example, in the 60s, it would have been racism. Like, people knew that racism was wrong. Most people just instinctively knew that was wrong, and that something had to be done. And there's issues that come up kind of generationally, which people just know that something is not right, that something has to be done. And I think that is partly cultural, but it goes beyond that as well. And it's to do with where we come from and how we're made. And certainly for me, it comes from the divine. It comes from God. It comes from, that there's something underlying all of that. And we can literally disconnect ourselves from that completely. I think we can completely reject that, and lots of people do. And sometimes we don't, and I wouldn't say that's dependent on our religious belief either, because I know that people who are atheists who are really in tune with those things, really in tune with all those kind of ideas, they're very perceptive, and they're very in tune with the needs of the world, and they're servant-hearted, and they serve other people, they put other people first, they're generous, all these kind of things, and they know that those things are important, but they don't have any religious faith, but nevertheless they're in tune with something, which is true. So I think it's more to do with our actions and what we choose to do, how we choose to live. That we can cut ourselves off, or we can connect ourselves to the source of our being.
Some of what you're calling the source of our being and you're calling God are some things that atheists actually call wonder, or like people give different names to it. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I would call it wonder as well. Wonder is a great word.
It's sometimes I think people go, oh well, it's you're believing in supernatural, because I have a lot of conversations with atheists on my podcast. I try to bring in a lot of diverse views, and I've noticed that sometimes it's just different language, and people will get tripped over like, oh God, supernatural, unicorns, no thanks. But I've noticed too, sometimes people are using really, really similar stuff for just using different language, and it's actually pretty much the similar thing. Now, other times it's totally not. It'll be like, no, Allah is this and this and this, and then Yahweh is this and this and this. And it is obviously different. And then other times it actually seems really, really similar. So I know that sometimes atheists reject. I like to ask atheists, what God are you rejecting? And usually it's that it's supernatural forces that are like governing. It's usually a small G kind of God, and it's usually something else that's tinier.
Yeah, the only if I might say something, the only problem I see with religious people that believe in a certain faith or whatever is this weird belief some people have, not all people, but some people have this belief that there is a God, and that God is somehow involved in your life, like this blab I am talk. He's watching, he or she or it is watching in on you and somehow intervening, and that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense when you look at some people are born with what do you call it, just diseases, or just born with what do you call it when they're just not complete, or they have Down syndrome or something. So if God is, look, why do you think God cares about your personal life but doesn't care about this, these child? It just doesn't seem to me, my experience, that there's any kind of deity supervising you.
That's really interesting, James, because you're actually appealing to a God that's like a person. So you're falling into the same trap about people who think of God as a person too. So your argument is about God as a person, which is the same argument that I'm trying to say is that people think of God as a person, and you're saying you're rejecting that. So why wouldn't God care about a Down syndrome kid like I might if I was God, but you're a person. So like that actually that argument doesn't work. But I mean, I see your point, but that's what people do all the time is that they assume that God is like a big person, like Superman. Like, why doesn't God care about poor people? Why doesn't God care about this? And maybe he does, but it's like thinking of God as a person is where we go wrong usually.
I think that we go. I think when you think of God as a human being, you go wrong. I think God has a. I think there is someone that we. I think when I think of God, I think of a relationship because I talk to Him, and I've heard from Him, and I know other people who've heard from Him. So there is something of God speaking to us. But I don't think. I would say I wouldn't think of God as a human being. God is not a human being. You know, I mean, obviously Jesus was like God incarnate, and that was what God would look like as a man, and that's true. But God Himself is not a human being, and He is different. He is, I would say, He is bigger than time itself, but also closer than we are to our own hearts. Like He's the most intimate. It can be the most intimate interaction you have. And I've had those kind of interactions, those kind of experiences myself. But it can also this sense of wonder, like we're talking about wonder, that God is outside of our comprehension and understanding and anything we can argue or understand or perceive with our brains. And, outside of time and everything, but at once also so intimate. And that's the paradox. That's a paradox about God. But it's, I get the idea that God isn't a person. God, because I kind of get what you mean by that completely. That we talk to God like He's another human being, And actually, God's got a whole different perspective than we.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are a bit more enlightened. I'm just gathering my thoughts from what I've seen on Periscope and people like.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, please, there's so many views and there's so many things. I was to tell you my background just really briefly. My parents met at a fundamentalist Baptist seminary. So it's as fundamentalist. My background is as they get. Okay. No dancing, no drinking, no cards. So I've been there. I'm just not there now. Do you know what I'm saying? So I know how that goes. And I've prayed and I've thought God's spoken to me. And I feel that that's been true. But then I've also, just to be perfectly honest in my doubts, okay, because I'm just being really vulnerable and open with you, everybody here, you world or whatever, that I go, well, was that me? Was that part of my consciousness and a conscious loop in my head answering myself? Is that what that was? Maybe. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just being honest with you. And then I, felt very atheistic as well and said, well, it seems like that was just my brain interpreting reality. And maybe it's just a mental process. And so I've worked through all different angles of this too. And here's what I've come up with. I don't know, but I do know the way of love is how it works. And if I'm wrong in that, if I'm wrong that the way of love is wrong and I die, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same, Lisa. I've definitely had those experiences of doubt and questioning and not sure of all the answers, and and is this me or is this God, or who is God? What is God? What does that really mean? We can take things like, for example, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable here as well. When I was a kid, I went through a lot of difficult circumstances, and it was they caused a lot of resentment and hurt and bitterness, and I blamed God for a lot of the damage that had been done to me and a lot of the bad circumstances that I've been through. And I felt like God owed me, and there was this real deep hurt. And I voiced that publicly, and it was, it was really liberating. And there was a change in me after that. And then I've noticed that other things have been happening, which have kind of formed a pattern. And different areas of my life are suddenly being challenged. Now, some people would call that God is speaking to you, God is doing something in you. Other people will just say that's just life, that's just circumstances, that's just growth. Now, I sense some of these things going on inside of me, which are, I perceive them beyond my conscious self. I perceive them beyond my brain, not in my brain. They're not an emotion. There's something really much bigger than that. Now, you can call that, I would call that God. I would call that, because it's outside of my understanding, it's outside of my perception. I know it couldn't have come from just my own consciousness, because because it's tapping into something that is already inside of me, but it's kind of almost probing at it. It's probing at issues that I have that I haven't had, that I haven't dealt with, and it's just something out external is kind of probing at these things. But at the same time, it's not just external; it's internal as well. So there's that. And I would call that God, but certainly I would say that God is bigger than a lot of the traditional Christian church paints him. And there's a lot more mystery and a lot more unknown, and there's a lot more, there's a lot of different dynamics to it. We can't just kind of put God in a box, or just or squeeze him down into a person like you're talking about. There has to be wonder, there has to be mystery, there has to be unknown, there has to be questioning, there has to be okay, so is like healing that people call spiritual, like healing, like people get prayed for and they're healed. Is that actually just a scientific process that we're tapping into that goes on in our subconscious that we don't understand? And but we've just attributed it to kind of supernatural, But then you could say, is all of that just how we were made, and did God make us that way? And he just put it in language that we could understand because we weren't that advanced as human beings at that point. So there's these endless questions, and that's what I love about this kind of thing. And this is all connected to the topic of the source of our being, because this is about who God is and what is the source of our being. So
that's kind of why I like exploring. I like having scientists on the show and neuroscientists on my show, because they don't believe what I do or what I'm trying to figure out. I haven't settled yet. And so I want to know, what is the process that's happening in the brain when a placebo works, right? Or when prayer works, what's actually happening in the brain, what's actually happening in the process of the brain, because something's happening. It's not magic when someone's healed. There's something happening in the brain, right? And so I want to know what's what's happening there, right? Just like what you're saying, James. Is a healing like a healing and like revival, like let's lay hands on him? Well, what's really happening when the body heals? That's what I want to know. And that might be, James Watson over here, you would really love Ask Science Mike. Yes. So Science Mike, wasn't he? Right?
Oh yeah.
So, oh my gosh, he's so good. He's a Christian and an atheist, totally like ditched. He's like a science guy. Okay. But then he came back to this mystery thing, kind of like what we're talking about here. And he's like, but he's not, I don't think he believes in the resurrection or heaven, or I don't even know. But anyway, he answers sciencey questions, and he answers some of these questions I want to know about. And it's like, you have to know what's happening in the body. It can't just be like, to me anyway, I don't feel it's very satisfying to get these pat answers. I'm just like this right now. I'm sorry to anybody who's really disappointed in me right now, because I grew up and just believe, just believe what we're telling you. And I feel like I need to know more. And so I want to know what's happening in the brain, because that's the main way we interpret the world. And there are things that happen, like when we feel like we have these new experiences, we create a new category in our brain, and then we put everything under that category, and we start viewing the world under that category. And it could be that that's how God decides to work with us. And it could be that God works through us through our own consciousness and our own hearing this voice that seems like God. It could be that that's how God works. But it could be that we fool ourselves. But either way, what I think is the most important thing is that if it leads us to a good life, then good. But if it leads us to hurting people, and I'm not saying we should all believe in lies or something, but I am saying that it still does matter about the fruit that comes out in our lives. And I still read the Bible and I still pray, but sometimes I don't know who or what I'm praying to, but it's still such a part of my formation from childhood on that I haven't given up going to church, and I haven't given up believing in Jesus and things like that. But I feel very unsettled and I want to know more. So I'm not going to stop searching and looking and finding out about the brain. And I'm not going to just throw the whole thing out, but I'm not going to just take easy answers either. So yeah, you're catching me in flux right now, people. I'm curious. I have to know more.
I had a really interesting discussion with these guys called the deconstructionists.
Yes.
And we talked about some of this kind of thing. And we talked about, it's really important we don't just get to a place and settle. Like, it's like, the really important thing about that is that you there's always got to be mystery and doubt and questioning. But when sometimes you get to seasons where, okay, I settled at this place, which is fine, as long as you don't hold it with a closed hand. Like, so you get to a certain set of understandings that you think, oh, that makes sense, I'll kind of settle there. But the really important thing is that you don't settle there and then just close off to anything else. So you settle there, but you have open hands so that you're willing to question, willing to doubt, willing to explore other ideas, maybe more progressive ideas, and move on from where you are. So it's kind of like, okay, I might kind of settle with some kind of clear concept, clear ideas of what God is or who God is or whatever. You know, maybe Lisa will get to that place at one point. But when she gets to that place, she needs to hold. I would advise saying, hold those things, hold that place you get to with an open hand, and be willing to go again to another place, because that's what kind of growth is all about. You know, that's what you could call that spiritual growth. You know, if you wanted to, because I think it's really important we don't get into certainty. And actually, speaking of Science Mike, I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to be on my podcast in a couple of weeks' time. And his story is amazing. It's just, I was choking up because it was so emotional, and he just knows so much about this stuff. And he's been an atheist, and he's still quite skeptical in many ways, and he knows the science, and he knows the kind of some of the theological stuff too. And I think you'd probably benefit a lot from hearing someone like that, because he really knows his stuff and he's got an interesting story. So
well, I'll tell you what, I mean, switching gears a little bit, but I grapple with these questions like, why am I here? And when I die, does this awareness carry on, or is it extinguished? And I've kind of come to the conclusion that, whether it may be that if I'm aware right now and there's this thing now, maybe it'll be this thing in the future. And maybe, or maybe this is just a one-time thing. I'm on this planet for just one lifetime, this awareness, this particular formation, and then it's done. And I better choose that option, because, I mean, what if this is the only life? If I'm living my life like I'm going to live forever and be in heaven, then I'll just chill through life and just almost be in a hurry to die. So I'm just going to take this as some kind of crazy miracle and just live. Oh, yeah. Just live like today's my last day.
That's healthy, yeah.
That is really healthy,
right?
Yeah.
I know. That's what
I like
that's
that.
what my podcast next Wednesday is called Life Before Death, because I'm thinking, like, we talk about heaven and we don't know what that is.
Yeah.
What's that? Like we are spitballing at best, about that. And we know about now. like I'm thinking this is what counts now because we know about now.
Yeah.
And so people are talking about heaven like they're waiting for something. I'm like, big mistake. Big mistake. Just live now, because you're missing out on your relationships, on what you can do for others, and just being good in the world, just looking around. I don't know, having nice discussions with people like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people going, oh, this is horrible. This is horrible. Well, in heaven it'll be better. And it's like a way to check out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, yeah, so boring. Like about, like, oh, if it's just about where you go when you die, that's kind of boring. And I just read this book about how to be fully present in today, in this moment, and actually slow down enough. And I think somebody mentioned about breathing in the comments. It's we're meant to breathe 7 times in a minute, not 20 times, which most of us do. And we're meant to breathe from our chest. We're meant to breathe from our stomach, not our chest. And we're meant to get 99% of our energy through breathing. And it's interesting because the name for God in the Old Testament is similar to the sound of breathing as well. But the point of this book is that if you slow down enough, you start noticing little things. Like after I read that book, I went to the park and I sat there and I looked at this leaf on this tree, and it was a massive tree, loads of leaves. But I saw this one leaf, and I started to notice it, and I looked, there were all these different colours and shapes and lines in it, and I would never have noticed that and it was just like this transcendent, like really peaceful moment, like almost disconnected from things, and just
you're having a Zen moment.
Yeah, being fully present in the moment, rather than like anxiety, which is about the future, or fear, which is about the past, or whatever, and being fully present at the moment, and suddenly you have a bit more peace. And obviously, not saying we can do that. We can't do that all the time. But if we can start practicing that a bit more, then that will be really healthy. And actually, not just thinking about what the past is or what the future might be. Actually, just saying, how can I be the best person I can be today?
Yeah.
How can I make the most of today?
Well, we have our brains are the most complicated structures in the known universe. They're these ridiculously powerful computers. And I mean, just yesterday, a team of people in Florida launched a space rocket, and they were able to take the stage 1 booster, reverse it, and land it on a platform in the ocean. I mean, this is to me, we're just talking animals, but we have these incredible brains that can do that. But at the same time, you look at a squirrel or an animal, they're not worried about, oh, I'm a squirrel, or where am I going to get my next nut? They're just totally in the moment. And the problem with our brains are so powerful that, unless we're focused or engaged on a task, they're just fretting about something or trying to create something interesting. And that can be very stressful, I find. So being, in a meditative state or a Zen state, like James 1 was, it does take a lot of burden off that incredibly powerful machine. I mean, we're the most sophisticated organism that we know of in the universe. So
that's so true. What you're saying there reminds me of something that Liz Gilbert said, which actually turns the mystic side of me on, right? So there's the one side of me that's like neuroscience, and I have to find that out. I want to know. And then there's the other side. It's like what she said was, we're too evolved, and we're too sensitive, and we're too vulnerable for that to be evolutionarily necessary, and that we're too smart for that to be evolutionarily necessary. We should just be slightly smarter than apes. And we don't need more. We don't need all this brain power. It's way, 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 way too much. And why the heck would it be? What in the world is that for? What's going on? And that's too hard to explain. And I was like, dang, I didn't think of that. That's true. Like if I'm disconnected, granted, I'm disconnecting from my entire childhood when I'm thinking this, right?
Yeah.
I'm disconnecting from my seminary education, my own seminary education when I'm thinking this, okay? And I've spent loads of time reading the Bible and all that, but I also try to just pull myself out and try to think objectively and think, can I think of this with fresh eyes? And that is a really tough one, because I do think that humans are really distinct among animals, and that we do have animal parts of our brain that are totally like, eat, mate, kill, and that's it. But then you're right. The complexity of our brain is unbelievable, and all these consciousness loops and all these feedback loops, incredible. And you have to wonder why so many, and you have to think, this is kind of unnecessary. I don't think we need this many, and why? What's going on? And so those questions plague me as well. And I'm not saying I know all the reasons why, and I'm not saying I can. A lot of people will tell you exactly why. I'm not going to, but I'm just saying that, yeah, it's puzzling. Well, one of the reasons why it's puzzling is, and I'm not very certain about that, but that to me points to a source of our being as our topic.
Well, I guess those people you're talking to that gave you an answer was it's an evolutionary process. I'm sure, do you guys believe in evolution? And basically, if you have one generation and then the next generation, there's a small little difference. If that little difference, just completely randomly, if that actually that new offspring was able to reproduce, maybe we'll keep that one little change. And you repeat this a million times, guess what? You evolve into a human being. So, or whatever other animal.
Yeah.
Although we still don't need as many adaptations and complexity as we have for an evolutionary necessity. And that's what I'm pointing to. Like a squirrel, like you said, has squirrel, like it's like a squirrel, if you're looking at the squirrels and how much they've evolved, they're not that bright. They don't need to be. And humans are smarter than they need to be. And even we've been around far less long than most of the animals. So, the animals should be way smarter than us. We've been around a lot less long than they have.
We share a common ancestor with a chimpanzee. Like you can figure that out. So our great grandmother was a chimpanzee, as well as the chimpanzee's great grandmother. It's not a hard thing to figure out. So I think we've kind of been around. I'm not a biologist, but I think we've been around for a pretty long time, but not in this human form. That's a mutation that actually has worked because we're still around, although there's no guarantee that we're going to live into the future. I mean, look what we're doing to our environment. Like, that's the one thing that keeps us alive. And we just, up until, the last few decades, we just didn't care about it at all, So there's no guarantee we're going to survive as a species. So maybe this having high-powered brain is going to do us in. Yeah.
It could, especially with nuclear proliferation and trashing the earth is not going to help us out.
No, it's not. And again, that's all connected to the kind of the source of our being thing. I think we could. I mean, obviously we've been talking for nearly 2 hours now, but
we're really going close to 2 hours.
Whoa, time flies.
We'll probably have to close it out at 2 hours. That's a bit otherwise anything more long. But I think the thing that's really kind of got me about this whole discussion from start to finish is there's stuff going on that we don't understand. There is stuff going on that's deeper than our conscious self. There's stuff going on, that we're like you're saying, we don't need to be as evolved as we are, but we do. So we must have the capacity to. But I think evolution is not just about, this is where spiral dynamics comes in. Evolution is not just about physical transformation and adaptation. It's like spiral dynamics is basically a theory of evolution of our consciousness. So our human consciousness evolves over time as we develop. And as we experience more of the world, as we get more knowledge about the world, as we, as you move from generation to generation, culture to culture, make technological breakthroughs, those things all have a huge impact on our consciousness, our collective consciousness, and our individual consciousness as human beings. And that's something that's, well, it's on a subconscious level, but it's also on a conscious level as well, because I'm not going to talk about spiral dynamics in great detail, but there are different levels of, I talked about this a bit earlier, different levels of of consciousness within. There's two levels of consciousness, and then within those two levels of consciousness, there are different levels within those. So that's how it works. And the human race is progressing through those, and there's more to come that we haven't got to yet. And the ones that we haven't got to yet are kind of more on a transcendent level, and who knows if we'll ever get to that. But because the second tier consciousness is when you've been through all through the stages of the first tier consciousness, and you recognize the benefits of all of them, and you transcend them all. And that's a really, really powerful thing.
James, who's the author who's the person who's come up with that spiral dynamics?
It's a guy called Don Beck is the main guy. I'll try and find a link to something about spiral dynamics, because it's really, really interesting. And I really want to do an episode of my podcast about it as well. And I think
that it is interesting what you're saying, because with even like, if you're talking about the Bible as an ancient document that's kind of tried to make meaning out of the world, and it shows a different level of consciousness kind of recorded too. It's, there's genocide in there, stuff like that. And it's stuff that we wouldn't even want to record that we're doing and whatnot. And so I think that it's an interesting theory about evolution and of people, and hopefully it's a hopeful one anyway, about how we can maybe progress and get over that, get through it, and move to some better place.
I'll just put a link in the side about, that's a graphic of the different levels of consciousness which it talks about. So there's actually, oh no, it's not. I've lost it now. But yeah, here we go. So there's different colours. I mean, we can talk about this. I don't want to talk about this in too much detail, but so you start off right at the basic level, which is kind of, and then you move up to the really high levels. And we should do. I'd like to do a live call about this, actually, with some experts as well, and because I think it's really important. It changed the way I interacted with other people when I learned about this the first time. It changed the way I understood other people. It changed my relationships with other people. It changed how I interacted with the world. It helped me understand politics better. It helped me understand people's opinions better, and how helped me and changed how I treat people in a good way, in a positive way. So I think this is something that is really worth exploring in more detail, and we definitely couldn't do that today. I think, but that is something that we really need to explore more and understand in a kind of deeper way, because it'll help us understand. It's actually help us understand the whole concept of the source of our being. It will help us understand that a lot more, and it's definitely helped my I would say what I would call my relationship with God. It's helped that, because you can actually start to see, and when you look at the Bible, you can actually start to see how God was doing that through history in the Bible as well, in terms of the cultural changes, in terms of the progression of the teaching and stuff as well. It's just this fascinating idea, so that's definitely an idea that we should try and be exploring more. I think people need to understand that kind of thing more, and they need to explore that more, because it's really, really important. So I might even email the guy himself and actually try and get him on my podcast, because I think it's a topic that really needs to be talked about. So, yeah.
When is your podcast, James? Like, kind of working.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I'll just get you a link for it. It's called James Talks. It's on iTunes. It goes out pretty much every week. Sometimes I talk about a lot of these kind of topics that we've talked about today. The link is going to be coming up now. There it is. That's the link for it on iTunes. And yeah, you can go and check that out. And I think I've just convinced myself I'm going to email this guy and try and get him on to talk about this, because it's just such a fascinating thing. And they had actually there's this podcast called The Liturgists as well, and they did a whole episode on spiral dynamics, and it's really, really fascinating. And so do check that out, because it'll help you understand this topic a lot better as well, for sure. So yeah, I mean, it will be remiss for me to to really try and explain that subject in too much depth, because it would take a long time, and I'm not an expert on it. But essentially, there's different stages, like different stages through history. There's been different ideas about. There's been different, example. Okay, so I'll just go through them really basically. So there's like the first. There's like 2 tiers, and the first tier is made up of 6 different stages. And the first one would be like I think if you look at the link, very primitive. Basically, do what you need to survive. You just food, just go out and go hunter gatherer kind of thing. Very basic. Then you move on to the next stage, which is more about, okay, there's outside forces which govern what we do, like the rain and the sun and all that, which are out of our control. So then you start getting into kind of like the magic, the kind of to keep the spirits happy, sacrifices for the spirit gods or whatever, that kind of thing. Then you get on to kind of the more, as human beings develop, there's this more kind of the early mythic, feudal, exploitative empire kind of thing, aggression, like might makes right. I'm literally reading off this thing here, but it's basically about power winning. Like the guy with the biggest guns wins, basically. And so there's that concept, there's that step, there's that stage, and then there's the next stage, which is more authoritarian, more it's more about structure, more about organization, more about hierarchy, those kind of things. And I see a lot of that in the evangelical church, to be perfectly honest. That's about certainty. It's about order. Very, very kind of. You see that in the army. Certainly very structured, very that kind of thing. And then you move on to kind of rational stuff, which is more science, more logic, all that kind of thing. Rational truth. Goals, set goals, measure success, whatever, that kind of thing. Consumerism goes in there as well, those kind of things. That's the next stage, that color is orange. I haven't gone with the colors before, but that will get the orange one, I would say, the orange stage. And then they're
color coded. That makes it easier to remember.
Yeah, that's right. And then you get to kind of green, which is more activism, human rights, diversity, inclusion, that kind of thing. That kind of stuff. And then you get to the next stage, which is the beginning of the second tier. The yellow stage looks at all those other tiers that I've just talked about and says all of them have benefit. All of them have something good to offer. and we take the good of all those other stages and we bring them all together. People say that Jesus was at this kind of well, not this stage. There's another stage as well. There's another stage. Actually, this yellow stage. Before I get onto that other stage, this yellow stage, the first stage of second tier consciousness. Let's say only 1% of people on the planet Earth are at this stage. So 60 million people, I think that is, or whatever it is.
I don't know how they came up with that number.
They surveyed everyone. Did you get your survey?
I have no idea how they came up with that. Don't ask me. And then the last stage, which is the second part of second tier consciousness, is I'm going to read what it says. It's spirituality, transrational perceptions, collective individualism, authentic irony, an ecology of perceptives. It basically takes it's like almost transcending everything. And people say that Jesus was one of these kind of people. And maybe some of these other major philosophical teachers through history have all reached this kind of level, and that's how they've got their understanding of everything else. So that's literally like real basic, spiral dynamics, and I have not explained it really that well, but it's basically and actually the table that I'm looking at actually has by its side the A's that you should go through all these different levels of consciousness. I'm not sure it actually always works like that, because I think people go to a certain level of consciousness and they get comfortable there and they stay there. And you think that, but it's not a matter that you're just at one level. It's like you can, like, there's some levels which kind of interact with each other. So like the green one, which is about activism and human rights, that can easily get linked with the power one, because you start to get aggressive and you can start to be violent, and because you're campaigning for these causes, so it ends up becoming a lot like the red, which is the power, So there's links between them all as well, but if you understand them even on a basic level, which is literally what I do, I don't understand much about them, but I understand them on a basic level. If you understand them on a basic level, it will help you see the world differently. It will help you interact with other people differently. You'll see, they're at this stage. This is how they see the world. This is what this group of people are like. This is what and it's really, really interesting. And it helps you.
I don't know. I'm definitely in that red survival, just want to eat stage at least like 3 times a day. I get hungry, and it's hard for me to be all enlightened and care about my community when I'm starving. So, can you move in and out between the colors, or?
Yeah, you can. You don't stay. It's not that you don't. It's like, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. It's not like what's that person? It's not like those personality tests that you do where it's like, I'm an INFJ, or I'm a this, I'm a that. We're all a combination of a lot of them. We can all, and actually, getting to the second tier of consciousness means understanding that and being comfortable with the fact that every single level has something to offer, and actually being in tune with all of those different levels inside yourself, and that's mind blowing. But it's fascinating. So
it's interesting, like what blows your mind and what doesn't, and like I'll read a book or watch a movie and I think it's the most amazing thing in the world, and then I'll forward it to my sister or friend or somebody, and they just won't care. It's like stuff has to find you in a certain time in your life, otherwise it's just not going to work for you. You got to be at a certain level. So I mean, I'll check it out. I just don't feel like I'm at the point where it seems like an awfully complicated framework, and I like the Eckhart Tolle just being present in the moment, because that's really easy. I can do that. Just I'm thinking, just be aware. It seems like a lot easier than which color level am I at? It works for you. I don't know, but just what I'm saying.
No, I mean, I'm not saying it works for everybody. I mean, it's just I think there is a kind of very basic explanation. The link that I gave you is a very basic explanation of it, and literally just scratches the surface.
It's just a framework.
I went to a talk by Rob Bell, and he talked for 2 hours about this, and oh man,
that sounds like a lot. I'm gonna have to go, James. No, I'm fading because I've been here for 2 hours.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna have to. Yeah,
you can carry on though.
Oh no, I think 2 hours is a good length. Actually, I think we haven't exhausted
we should let Rhiannon have the final word. She's been such a patient listener.
You could sing us out.
Yes, sing us out, Rhiannon.
I don't know that I have enough voice left for singing you out. But I would like to make one observation, actually from a long time ago. When James 2 mentioned something about God, if God exists and he's this compassionate God, why would people be born with Down syndrome? Why would they get diseases, etc.? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's because I've dealt with chronic pain issues for most of my life, various challenges with depression and anxiety. But I have come to a place where I can see beauty in suffering. I can see progress in suffering. We all have our challenges. We all have our gifts. And sometimes those are the point. What we can or can't do leads us down the path that we're supposed to go on. Sometimes we have to do less because of our limitations or our struggles. Sometimes those strengthen us to take on the next challenge that is bigger than us. Mm-hmm. If you've had to be in a dark place, maybe that has given you a tool for the next season of your life that you aren't even aware is coming. So I think tying that back into the source of our being, the good and the bad. There's a song, it's an old rap country song called "Every Drop of Water Shakes the Stone." So the good and the bad in our lives make us who we are, and whether that's from the universe, whether that's from God, whether that's something of our own making in some random evolutionary moment of circumstance, those are all the source of our being, and so they all have value. Whether it's a child with Down syndrome, an 80-year-old man who's in a wreck and suddenly has to learn how to walk again, whatever scope of challenge it is, that is part of our being. That is part of who we are and part of our path through life. So.
Cool. With that, I'm going to leave you guys. It was lovely talking with you. I'll check out your various podcasts. I'm sure they'll be quite interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Thanks for coming on. Really great.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
That was cool.
Right. So thank you everyone for watching.
Yeah, that was really cool. I'm glad you came up.
Such a good discussion.
It's one thing to chat among ourselves and feel sort of like-minded, and then when James comes on and says, but what about this and what about that? I appreciated his views so much. And it's just really lovely to hear from him. That was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so good. I've learned so much.
A lot of bravery.
And again, we just got to. Sorry? It
takes a lot of bravery for someone to come into where he's 5%. He's the pretty. As far as the three of us have similar ideas and a lot of aspects. To be the one to say, okay, well, I'm an atheist and here's what I believe, and that takes some bravery. That takes a lot of guts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well.
Yeah.
This
is
cool.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Rhiannon, for performing. That was brilliant. Seems like a long time ago now.
That was in the morning, and now it's afternoon.
Yeah, it's evening now. It was afternoon, and now it's evening here. It's like 6 o'clock in the evening now.
It's only 10 minutes of afternoon for me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We'll kind of, what I'm going to do is I'll just bring the recording to an end. Yeah, connect with us. There's links to all our podcasts and social media and blogs and stuff in the chat at the side. We'd love to hear from you. And do get out there and start creating stuff if this has made you think.
Yeah.
You know, I literally would generally love to hear and see what people can create out of this topic, because it's such a big topic and there's infinite possibilities, I think.
If this generated any thoughts of your own on the topic at all, you want to blog post about it or write something, just put in hashtag synCREATE, SYN create. I'm not going to bother spelling it because I'll probably misspell it. But then we'll see it. We'll search for the tag and then we'll spread it around. Then we can all read it.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic. So, so that's the end of the call, and I'm going to cut it off the recording here. So thanks, everyone.